For those of you that haven't seen me yet, my name is Martha Luriano. I am a real estate agent here in the Maryland and Washington, D.C. area. I've actually been in real estate since 2003. I've done from property management to worked at CoStar Group, the commercial MLS, if you will. Worked there for over 8 years. I was a dual career agent for about 6 years. And then I took the grand leap of faith. I obtained my real estate license in 2008. So I have been an active real estate agent since then. And I've been a full-time agent since 2014. So today my business consists of helping everyone, right? I have combined my skills and knowledge into providing my clients with the residential, commercial, and property management side of business. So that's who I am. So today's topic, as you guys see, is going to be talking about working with buyers and sellers. I have taught this class before. This is sort of an upgraded version, if you will, of a template PowerPoint presentation. So I will add my 2 cents, if you don't mind, in it, because it's such a large business that you can carry by serving both buyers and sellers. How many individuals do we have here in the class that perhaps have not closed any sales transaction? Maybe by show of hands, if you don't mind. Okay, not a problem. Thank you for your honesty, because that helps me understand what level of education I can provide you on. So that's why I asked. I see that when someone has already expressed that they haven't closed any transactions yet, can anyone else be honest? So that way I know what type of level I can provide, because there's so much that can happen on the buyer. Thank you. I see you. Thank you so much. I'm not going to call anyone out, but thank you. Thank you for your honesty. So again, feel free to use me. Like my first question of the night was there anything in particular that you were hoping to gain from tonight's class, considering that it's obvious, right, that we'll be talking about working with buyers and sellers. So was there anything, any questions, anything in particular that you were hoping to walk away with from tonight's class? All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So again, tonight's, sorry, I'm over here having 3 screens in front of me, so bear with me here. All right, so let's get right into it, right? Today, we're gonna be talking about the transactional side of the business, where we have covered both the winning, the sellers, as well as the buyers. So now we're gonna move right into working with both sets of clients, right? So not only are we going to be diving into how to get working sellers and buyers, but we're also going to be talking about the time frame that it typically takes for you to not only obtain a new client, do the consultation with them, but how long it traditionally takes you to get from that point of getting an actual agreement with that potential, with that new client of yours, to actually getting to the finish table. So that's where I'm hoping to finish off this segment. We're going to start the presentation with speaking on regards to buyers directly, and then we're going to go right into sellers. And I'm hoping that by us talking about the buyers first, it'll help you understand maybe why you've heard through the grapevine why before you should consider being a listing agent, right, working with sellers only, you should consider working with buyers, because there's so much that you learn about what it is that buyers financings, of course, also traditional buyers nowadays are hoping that a property has. So then that way, when you turn key and become a seller's agent, and you come from that mindset of knowing exactly what today's average buyer is looking for, what today's average home inspector is going to call on a property. So you get a lot more knowledge when you're working first with buyers, and then you smooth your way into sellers. But of course, to each his own. That's what worked for me. In fact, when I first started, I was working with tenants, and then I moved my way up to buyers. And then that's why I felt even more confident with working with sellers, because I felt like I kind of had much experience of identifying exactly what was important for the average Joe. So when it came down to me actually meeting with potential sellers, then I was able to walk through the house to identify potentially any red flags. And that alone helped a lot of frustration on the seller side later on when they were under contract and stuff like that, which is the reason why in these trainings I like to just be honest with you and just share with you what you should consider if you haven't done so already. All right, so let's go into the next slide, which again, we're briefly going to be talking about the agenda today. We're going to be identifying the key information on how to build success with the buyer and sellers. We're going to employ strategies on how to assist buyers and sellers with their decision making. And we're also going to build a strong success foundation relationship with your working with your clients as well as the co-op agents, right? Because it's not only about being friendly and the nicest person to our clients, but it's also about working united with the other agent. I'm huge on that, right? Both of our jobs is to make sure that we are conveying information clearly, right? With us knowing obviously our client's position, but even more sometimes knowing the other side's position helps us find that happy medium. And obviously the person that you have to find that happy medium with would be the co-op agent, which is why I'm big on making sure that that there's mutual agreement, mutual communication, all that fun stuff, because that is how we can work together to make sure that we get both of our clients to the finish line together. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to get started with this first quote that was written in the MREA book. Does anyone want to read it out loud?
I can read it.
Thank you.
Okay, virtually every top producing agent we have ever worked with has a deep and almost inherent sense of service. They have a servant's heart and place their buyers or sellers' real estate experience above all else. They are always thinking service.
Raymond, thank you so much, Raymond. And that's exactly, I think the quote says it all, right? See, the point in the transaction is that we're focusing today on the time it takes between getting a signed buyer or a listing agreement to receiving and or making an offer, right? So however, just as you, folks are flooding in, just as you are going to take aspects of lead generation into the transaction, you'll of course also take aspects that we discussed today through and post-closing. And so our first topic is going to be talking about success with your clients, right? So let's cover the things you can do with both your buyers and your sellers to make this process as transparent and smooth as possible for them, okay? So the key for success with clients is communication, as I mentioned, right? It's not only about communication with our clients, but even more sometimes with a co-op agent. But the more communication that you build with your client, the more better off you are able to comprehend and understand exactly what the client's position is and what it is of what their needs actually are, okay? So we've covered this in many areas so far, right? Including the assistance with Command from previous Ignite classes, as well as the app that Command has to offer. And making sure that you're communicating value to your sphere of influence, right? Your leads as well as your clients. So great communication is a foundation for great relationships with your clients. Remember that they're trusting you with what it is that most likely will be the largest transaction for the life of their selves as well as their family. So just make sure that you need to make sure that your communication is, in these instances, provides a strong foundation for a sustainable relationship, sets and manages expectations proactively throughout the transaction, creates peace of mind for your clients, and enhances your credibility, okay? So these are pretty much a great way of how you can know what to say. If you realize that you sometimes don't know what to say, then that's when you can go back to practicing your scripts as well as practicing getting some education, because there's a lot of education out here that can help you understand how to work with certain sets of clients. So if your focus is to work only with buyers or your focus is to work with sellers or what have you, there's certain classes that can continue helping you understand how to uncover the client's needs and how to word it, etc. So the 3 levels of service are the following that you see on here, right? Purpose masters of service have a clear understanding of why they should be hired and can articulate it to anyone at any time. That's what your purpose is, right? As you should be portraying that over to your clients and or any potential clients. Great service begins with a clear purpose for why someone should work with you, right? Then you have value proposition. The best agents can translate their purpose and why people should hire them into a specific set of services that they will provide. And of course, fiduciary, right? Highly productive agents provide a level of service based on their commitment to act as a fiduciary for their clients. They place their clients' interests above all others, even their own. So a fiduciary brings a level of care and trust to the relationship that a functional agent does not. I know we talked about that in a previous class, and I'm sure you guys have heard that term many times during this Ignite class, right? The difference between the two. But in this particular class today, we're going to be talking about dual agency. I'm sure that most of you are aware of what dual agency is. Feel free to express yourself if you have any confusion as to what exactly it is. But I'm hoping that with the explanation I'm about to share with you, it'll help you understand why you do need to understand it, and make sure that you always have folks sign the consent for dual agency form. I know here in the state of Maryland, for example, you traditionally, even if you're representing the buyer, then say, for example, right, the only time that you normally use a consent for dual agency is if the listing broker and the buyer broker, right, listing agent, buyer agent, are under the same office, the same brokerage. So in essence, normally a listing, when seller agent puts a property on the market, one of the disclosures that's provided would be a consent for dual agency. So only if you're in that brokerage, under the same brokerage with that listing agent, is when you and your client signs it. So traditionally there is one for a seller, and traditionally there's one for a buyer. So you would make sure that not only does your actual client sign at the dotted line, but at the very bottom, you'll also see where they're now confirming, right? Because traditionally the listing agreement entails that the seller is okay with working with another agent within the same brokerage. Now, after you found the client, right, in this case, you would find the buyer. Now, there's a segment at the bottom, if you've ever seen it, there's a segment at the bottom where the buyer now has to acknowledge that, yep, I'm okay with it as well. And I'm simply affirming that I am aware that this is a dual agency type of transaction. So just make sure that you guys are making sure that all parties on both sides are signing both top and bottom if you're ever working with another, if the co-op agent that you're working with is under the same brokerage. Okay. So if dual agency is illegal in your state, you can simply mention the concept as something that clients might have questions about, even if they're coming in from another area. So I'm schooling you for those of you that may be coming in from another state, that maybe your state is illegal to have consent for dual agency, but yet someone asks you about what dual agency is. I hope that I just provided clarity to help you understand exactly what it is and when exactly you need to use it. So this is a great place to bring up the concept of dual agency, working with both the seller and the buyer on the transaction. So though this is legal in many areas, it is not advisable, especially as a new agent. Many infractions that endanger an agent's license stem from this practice, right? Being a fiduciary with your client means that you're making all decisions based on their best interest alone, right? So sometimes people can try to work both sides, but that's exactly in essence what we're advising you in this class to be mindful of, right? There's no possible way that you can sort of help a client look out for both of their sides' best interests, technically, is what this law is all about. So this is challenging when you're working with two parties with competing interests, right? So will your buyer expect that you're telling them everything about a house, even if the items may not be required to be disclosed, right? The same vice versa. Will your seller expect that that the offer you are making on behalf of the buyers is the best offer, since you have knowledge of the pre-approval amount? So these are the type of things that folks can possibly question your integrity and all that type of stuff, which is the reason why sometimes, so some even brokers I've seen prohibit their agents in their office to work both sides. But here in the state of Maryland, if you're here, that you are able to, but you just need to make sure that both sides sign the document that shows that they are aware of it and they're okay with it. If you ever catch yourself, any questions on that aspect, dual agency is a big thing that I just want to make sure that no one has any questions on, no one's confused about what it is. Okay. So just simply, like, here are some things that can go wrong with dual agency, for example. So are you really prepared to negotiate against yourself? When negotiating inspection items, for example, how will you make the seller's case to the buyers that the HVAC system is in working order and therefore should not be repaired, while telling the seller that the system is close to the end of its useful life and therefore should be replaced or covered by a seller paid home warranty? Right. So there's certain things that can come about as you're building that relationship with your seller client, but yet the buyer is then looking at you for you to disclose to them, tell me everything I need to know about this house, right? And obviously by law, when you know about a material defect or a latent defect, right, those that you cannot see, you have to disclose that to both sides, or to the other side, better said, right? So it's better to disclose it than not to disclose it, but you may want to pay attention to your state laws, because there are certain things that you should not disclose. And so those are the type of things that each state has its own rules and regulations on that. So that's the most I'll talk about that topic. But I did want to talk and dive into the importance of understanding dual agency. And if you ever find yourself in that situation, how you should either consider talking to your broker, because your broker can possibly represent the other person, or your broker could traditionally bring in an intra agent, right? Another agent within the office, so then that way legally everyone is representing each side. And of course, that consumer, right? Because technically they can be your client if you have an actual agreement with someone else. So whoever that can be, because right, it can be the other way around. Sometimes you're working with a buyer and then you're approaching a FSBO opportunity, trusting that most of you guys know what a FSBO is, for sale by owner. So sometimes, you know, one party cannot, they don't have to be represented, but they do have to sign the document that makes all parties aware that that particular person is deciding to move forward in the sales transaction without being represented. So again, you should know that according to your state law about what particular document that is. But places like there is such a form as understanding who real estate agents represent, as well as the consent for dual agency. Okay. Sorry, this thing is, all right. So with that, we talked about the 3 levels of service, and we revisited the whole fiduciary relationship, which I'm sure you guys have heard it several times before in the Ignite classes. So you can see that there is, as the what of being a great agent it consists of. And now let's talk about how of being a great agent, what it takes, right? How you reach the 3 levels of service for your clients is largely about communication and education. As a real estate agent, you are immersed in buying and selling houses pretty much every single day. It's your job, for a lot of us, that it's our passion as well, right? For our clients, this is something that they may never have done before. So even if they are a repeat buyer or seller, they are unlikely to do this more than every 8 years or so, right? NAR right now shows that the average person decides to sell or move pretty much within 7 to 10 years. I know at one point I had read that it's actually been extended now to 7 to 12 years. But the point is that they don't do this often, right? So you're the expert in this field. You're the one that's supposed to always get these CE classes, right? Although the Ignite class is not a CE class, kudos to you, because this is just simply additional education that can help you know exactly what to do, what not to do when it comes down to you meeting more potential clients. All right, so this is a typical sales transaction. Now, I purposely want to leave the screen up on here for those of you that maybe have not had a sales transaction, that this actually kind of gives you an outline as to what every step takes. I would love for you to really study this and let me know if you have any questions, please, because that's what I'm here for, to be able to not only share with you this PowerPoint, but even more, answer any questions or concerns you may have. All right, taking no one has any questions. Well, while we're here, just know that a key component to educating your clients is to review the entire process, right? So you've likely already touched on during your buyer or listing consultation. However, this is a complicated and emotional process that people don't remember. So everything, the first time you tell them, especially when it isn't an approximate time frame, this is true for almost everything in our lives, right? If I ask you what you're having for dinner a week from today, would you know, right? If you don't, are you worried that you don't have an answer? Of course not. That meal is not near as important as buying real estate, right? So right now you're much more interested in your next meal, picking up your dry cleaners, getting a present for your niece's birthday this weekend, or a million other things, right? So buying and selling real estate is not your everyday. That's the reason why folks tend to lean on their real estate agent to provide such knowledge and or know that these are the steps, right? So as they come across the need, that you should be one step ahead of making sure that they have the vendor in place, that they know exactly what's about to happen, what have you. So those type of red flags that you as a real estate professional are supposed to identify before it even is of need. So in other words, don't be surprised if you explain something, you have a heck of a consultation with your client, and then when it comes down to showtime, they're like, hold on, what did you say again? Right. So that's such a common hiccup nowadays, in the world. And that's because the fact that they don't do this every single day. So one of the key factors, again, going back to the 3 levels of service, is that it's our job to set expectations on time, right? So for example, if you told a buyer that they need to get to see properties the same day they hit the market, 2 months ago when they were focused on getting their down payment together, they likely won't remember the details, right? So if you are now setting up their search, you should update them on how quickly the market is moving in their desired neighborhood and price point. Does anyone have any questions on that? When it comes down to me sharing with buyers about the timeframes, to be honest, I'm one that I let the market speak for itself. Sometimes if a client is looking in a particular neighborhood that they know, no, this is the neighborhood that I want, then I'll share with them what's going on in that neighborhood. And one thing that I try to point out is the days on the market. And then I also try to point out the percentage of the sold price versus list price. So sometimes I just like to do that up front because it does help sometimes later on when they're like, oh my gosh, this is it, let's go for it. And yet everyone wants to negotiate. And yes, of course, you are to do what your client says, but sometimes if you're able to sort of beat the chase, right, from avoiding your client from losing out on bids, especially when they're so emotionally involved. This is the house of their dreams. This is the one I've always wanted, but yet their mindset is that they want to negotiate thousands of dollars less, not unless the comparables say that, right? So that's the reason why you just put market facts in front of them and allow them to see exactly what the market is saying that's actually happening in the area. And traditionally, the numbers will portray everything. So normally that does help you from being in that position where your client may be wanting to negotiate to now saying, you know what, in this area, houses are actually selling at 100% or 95% of the list price. So there's no need for me to have to negotiate, right, or ask more. So if you haven't done that already, I would highly encourage that because it does help you save some time. Also helps you from having to disclose such bad news to your client when in essence they told you they really wanted that house, but unfortunately they lost on the bid because of the fact that they wanted to, come in low as opposed to just following what the market trend says. So if you're now, so the same goes for sellers. So just because you covered how chaotic the first week is on the market might during the listing presentation 2 months ago, it doesn't mean that they remember, right? So reiterate how important it is to be flexible for showings. For most people, it's very rare to have such big decisions in such a short period of time. Prepare your clients for this change at their day-to-day pace. This is especially important as you get to the time-sensitive portions of the contract, right? That time. So remember when you're creating that offer, that is where you should be mindful of time frames. I always recommend that when you're putting up an offer for your buyer, you should not put any dates without the lender's consent, especially closing date. And here's why I say it, right? Because sometimes buyers are so enthused, they're so emotionally involved because they finally found the house and they're like, oh my gosh, you know what? I'll get the house in 2 weeks. But if their lender has not attested that they can in fact close that transaction in 2 weeks, then you're setting your client up for failure. Another thing that I also recommend to be mindful of is the time frame of the inspection. And the type of inspections that your client is choosing to have. Because here in the state of Maryland, for example, in the outskirts, really in the rural area, if a person wants to do a well and a septic test, then I myself know that traditionally at minimum, I want to put on the inspection report that it's going to take at least 15 days. So those are the type of things that as buyer agents, you should be mindful of. So if you're brand new to closing transactions, then I would certainly recommend to consider having that lender sort of as your right hand, right? Having that inspector as your right hand. So then that way, if by chance we haven't done a transaction before, which is just fine, we all start somewhere, either run it by your broker and or run it by that inspector that more than likely your buyer is going to choose to say, hey, inspector, the buyer is choosing to do a radon inspection. They want to do a termite inspection. They want to do a well and septic inspection, whatever it is type of inspection that your buyer chooses to have. It wouldn't be a bad idea, especially if it's your first couple of transactions, for you to run it by the inspector. How quickly can you get out there and how quickly will you provide the report back, right? Because an inspection can be done tomorrow. And sometimes traditionally nowadays, at least here in the DC area, it normally takes them about the same day or if not within 24 hours to provide the inspection report. But yet, who wants to make a decision in such a rushed manner, right? Considering what I just shared with you guys, that consumers don't do this every single day. And sometimes what I've seen happen is that inspections happen, and especially if it's a first-time home buyer, they come across some things that maybe they didn't even know was going to be a problem or what have you. And now they want to maybe call around to some general contractors, call around to some people to give them an estimate as to how much it's going to cost. So all these things take time, which is the reason why I'm encouraging you that when you're creating an offer, always make sure that you give your client more than enough time to not only one, do the inspection, two, to get the report back, but three, be able to digress and think about everything about how they want to move forward. Right. What's another thing about the appraiser? When you talk to the lender, you want to ask them. I tend to ask them the following questions, which not sure if you guys want to take a note on it, but it does work. So before I ever show properties to buyers, I'm calling the listing agent. In today's, now that the market is starting to pick up, especially here in our area, it's starting to pick up ever since January. I normally call the listing agent and I'll say, hey, do you have any offers in hand? If my client is an FHA or VA buyer, then I'll say, hey, will the house pass for FHA? Another thing I'll say is there anything in particular that your seller is looking for? Because those three things right there helps me. If my client does want to move forward with the property, then imagine how helpful those three answers will be to my client. If they're like, yep, this is it, let's move forward with it, right? You'll know if there's offers in hand. You'll know if the type of loan that they have will even pass for that property. And thirdly, you'll know what's important to the seller, right? In hopes that that offer can either match that or exceed that. So if by chance, sometimes the typical feedback will be, oh, they're ready to close right away. Or, you know what, my clients now need to find their next house, or they need about another 40 days to settle, or my clients can't help with closing help. All these things that they normally can provide to you can then hopefully then help you create a winning offer, right? And then in terms of the lender, when I reach out to the lender, traditionally, once when I do the buyer consultation, I'll contact the lender to sort of introduce myself, right? Letting them know that we have a mutual client. And so in that question, nowadays, lenders can't really divulge too much, which is just fine. I don't want to know buyers' personal information. I just want to know what kind of verifications have you done. So then that way, when it comes down to me negotiating on this buyer's behalf, I can say that to the seller, right? The lender has checked and verified their income, their credit, their assets, everything's solid. These are things that, if you can imagine, can help your buyer stand apart from those that perhaps the lender hasn't done so. Another thing that you want to ask the lender is, what's the time frame that you need to close? And that's when they'll tell you, oh, well, with this file, because I've done this, that, I can close it in 21 days as opposed to 45 days. How much of a big difference that can make, right? Also, what time frame do you feel it'll take for the appraiser, right? Run that by the lender, because the lender is the one that's going to be ordering the appraiser and is also typically mindful of the time frame that it traditionally takes, not only for the appraiser to go out to the property, but also to provide the appraisal report back. And these are all things that will help you when you're creating an offer, because remember, it's your client's name on the dotted line, not yours. And any time frames, anything that's mentioned on an offer, that can go against your client. And obviously, if anything's against your client, who do you think they're going to be looking to blame? Right. So these are the small little things that it can really take to make a difference, rather to get more referrals from that client, or this is going to be it from that person. So that's why I'm happy that you guys are here today. And I love teaching this class, because it's those small things that can really make a difference later on. Feel free to let me know if you have any questions based on what I just shared. The next thing that we want to talk about is document expectations. Okay. For the documents, you will likely need to go over the contract before you ever see a house with your buyers and before showings begin with your sellers. By going over it now, when there isn't time pressure, right, they will have some familiarity with it before they need to rush to put an offer in or quickly decide on accepting it. So at each stage, you'll review them where they are, right, and where you are and where they're headed. So in addition to the contract, what are other documents you'll need to go over with your clients in our market? Can anyone share? What, aside from the main documents, what other documents do you believe that you're going to have to share it with the client, either during the transaction or before the transaction? That wasn't a trick question. Is everyone sleeping on me today?
Financing documents, maybe?
Okay, Okima, thank you.
I would say that
Inspection.
disclaimer.
I heard inspection, and what was the other one? I'm sorry.
Disclosure and disclaimer.
Yes, and you're absolutely right. Yep. Everything that everyone said was absolutely correct. The other thing that I just wanted to add was the appraiser, right? The lead-based paint and other things pertaining to your marketplace. So you guys are all right. Thank you for that. So at each stage, you'll review with them where you are and where you're about to go, right? So it's sort of having that future pace with your client. So be sure that they know everything that is going to happen before it does. So for example, when talking to buyers who have just submitted an offer, you would tell them how long the seller has to get back to them. Right. So in that series of questions, when you talk to the listing agent, sometimes here, at least they'll say, seller, if it's a weekend, for example, sometimes they'll say in the remarks that seller will provide an answer by Monday. Sometimes if you don't see such notes on the MLS, then you can just you can ask that to the listing agent when you're calling them to see about the other offers in hand, etc. You can ask them exactly that. My way of asking them is, if I present you, but when I send you an offer, how quickly will your seller respond? That's normally how it is that I word it, but of course you can word it the way that is authentic to you. But just make sure that you are familiar with that. So when that way, when you're sort of closing out with your client, right, thanking them for signing the contract that you've already submitted the offer, what have you, then you close up with that. So just let me know if you guys have any questions on that. Set communication expectations, right? Set expectations for communication. Some agents feel that they can never turn their phone off. I laugh at that because I used to be me. You can never turn your phone off, or you can never take a day off. And that's not a way to live your life. Please know that it's okay to time block. Know that it's okay to have a day off. Know that it's okay to spend time with yourself, and with your loved ones, with your family. Know that that is just as if you were working a corporate, 9-to-5 job and you had days off. Know that you as an entrepreneur, right, as a business owner, you have to delegate those days, because sometimes, we can be in that go phase, and before you know it, so much time has passed. Oh my gosh, you've been so disconnected from the rest of the world. So I emphasize on that because I wish someone would have told me that. Just because it's like you tend to fall in love with just, at least for me, I tend to have fallen in love with just serving the folks, and I realized how much of an impact us realtors really can make in a person's life by helping them accomplish something they maybe sometimes never in their family has ever done it, a dream that they've always done. And so those type of things is what keeps you inspired and will keep you going. And before you know, you're like, man, I haven't had a day off. So just make sure that you time block yourself to do that. Okay. So if you turn off your phone at a certain time every evening, make sure that your clients know this. So just like any typical business, right, your typical business hours are X times. Feel free to share that, right? If they are where you won't get back to them between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m., they will not be looking for a reply. Let them know that you would check your messages first thing in the morning and attend to anything that they need then. This goes both ways. Be sure to find out what time your clients prefers, what time what's suitable, if they prefer text over phone calls, emails, what have you, if it should be a group text amongst the spouses or individually, these type of things, right? What's a good time based off the kids possibly having to go to sleep. So communication goes both ways. So if you haven't started doing it already in that initial consultation with your client, make sure that you review that as well. Okay. And those set contingencies, right? What will happen if a home comes on the market that is perfect for your buyers the weekend your sister's getting married out of state, right? Have a plan and communicate it well in advance. For example, if the wedding is on May 1st and you start working with these buyers on March 1st, you already know about the wedding. Communicate it when you meet, after signing the agreement, and in clear intervals leading up to the date. Be sure that they know you have a colleague who will cover the showings if needed. It's so funny when we're on this topic, because if you talk to any veteran agent, sometimes you finally have that vacation, and the moment you land, that's when your phone really wants to ring. So if ever you decide to go out of town, as you deserve, make sure that you have that sort of put together with someone that you're going to be trusting here, that's going to take care of your clients. Things of what's worked for me in the past is literally leaving an outline of everything that's going on with that client, not too personal, of course, just whatever is happening with that person, whether it's they need to move by this time, the inspection is happening on Saturday, whatever it is, the sellers already said that they won't help with anything, whatever it is that more than likely is important for that agent that's going to be helping you in your absence needs to know. And at the same time, communicate that with your client. It's going to be Al Smith that's going to be covering for me in my time that I'm away. right? But I hope that you can still be available in that phone call. But as long as you're able to communicate that to not only the agent that's going to cover for you, but even more your client, then normally you should be able to enjoy that day or weekend away. As a listing agent, perhaps your sellers will be out of town and unable to respond to offers on a particular weekend. Get that information well ahead of time and put it in the MLS so agents know that they need to provide a longer response time on offers submitted. So sometimes over here or wherever your marketplace is, sometimes buyer agents can actually present you with an offer that says we give you X amount of times to respond. If you know that your seller is going to be out of town and won't be responding until they get back, then make sure that you share that perhaps in the agent's notes that says exactly that. Also, let your clients know when communication needs to change. So, for example, when you adhere to their 5 to 8 no calls rules unless necessary once they put their home on the market, when time is of the essence, we all must act quickly. So make it clear to your clients when that turnaround becomes a primary concern to the success of their purchase or sale of a property. So those details should be provided early on in your relationship. So then that way there's no last minute surprises, what have you. All right. So set up to date market expectations, right? Updating your client's view of the market is another way for you to show your expertise, right? They need to understand the realities of the market that they're in. Is it a seller's market or is it an extreme seller's market, for example? Are houses selling slowly or is it becoming a buyer's market, right? National trends in housing are often on the news. However, that doesn't mean that your clients are paying attention to that or that the trend is nationally as opposed to locally. Which is very true, especially for those that's here in the DMV area, that sometimes what happens nationally is not actually what's happening here locally. So just make sure that you stay up to date with obviously what's happening globally, nationally, and even more locally. If by chance you're curious as to what databases you can use, of course, rely on your local MLS. You can also rely on Inman. You can also rely on my favorite Wall Street Journal. And then, of course, the MLS can provide you the latest trends of what's actually happening in your local market. So just to kind of give you an idea as to where you can find such information. This is the app. If you guys I'm sure that you guys have heard about it already hopefully in your market center. The technology person in your office can hopefully give you some more guidance about how to use it, where to find it. So this is just simply another reminder about making sure that you are taking advantage of this KW app. All right, so you might be thinking we haven't even put in an offer on the house yet, right? Why am I asking for reviews and referrals? Because you are already providing value, which is the first step to gaining referrals and reviews. From the beginning, tell your client, throughout this process, I'm going to give you amazing service and earn your trust, so you'll want every member of your family to work with me. 68% of sellers who use an agent found their agent through a referral by a family or friend. Okay, so remember, it's the simple steps: provide value, right? Ask for help. Let people know that your business is based on referrals, right? And reward the behavior. It's a QR code business card on the app with the new update. Yes, it is. Yep. Reward, right? Reward the behavior of referrals. Don't wait for closing. As soon as a client or other member of your sphere of influence tells you that they gave out your information, mention it on social media, or someone calls based on their recommendation, thank and reward that person who referred them, right? Send them a card, a gift card, or coffee, or what have you. Just be mindful of state regulations, because here in the state of Maryland, for example, you cannot say, hey, if you give me a business, I'm going to pay you, or I'm going to give you that. So just make sure that you know your state regulations about how you can gift the person that has referred business to you, and or how you can actually word it to them about referring business to you. Talking about reviews, all right? So remember, the point is, for every single client that you're working on, you can give reviews on it, right? Obviously, reviews do work, right? We all use the internet pretty much daily to read reviews on businesses to make our decisions. You need to be sure that you have as much of a positive web presence as possible. And great news, you already have your own website through KW, right? So it's the one you'll place to be sure that your reviews are accurate and accessible. Telling potential clients how successful you are at finding and selling homes can be effective. It's even more effective when other people do the bragging for you. It lends statements more credibility. I'm sure that most of you guys would agree. Okay, so the buyer-oriented reviews persuade when they say things like the buyer found their perfect home quickly, the agent negotiated a great price, the transaction went smoothly, they were impressed by the service. So what are some other buyer-oriented statements that you feel could be persuasive in a client testimonial? That was a question for you guys.
That for a listing client, it could be that you got the best price for their home.
True. Yep, in the quickest time possible. That is very true. Thank you for sharing that. And then what do you guys think would be good for a buyer's review?
It could be something as you helped explain the market to them.
Excellent.
Yes.
Thank you, Karen.
No problem.
Any aha so far of anything that's been mentioned to you guys? All right. So we've covered a lot so far, right? From dual agencies to reviews and referrals. Most importantly, we've talked about the key ways to create happy client relationships, consistently and clearly communicate regarding the current market and the process of buying and selling. So Karen, based on what you just said, here is pretty much what buyers have said about what it is that they really want most from their real estate agent. As you see, 52% obviously want help with finding the right home. The 13% shows helps buyers negotiate the terms of the sale of their property. The 11%, as you see, helps with price negotiations. The other 24 that you see is talking about help with the paperwork, determining what comparable homes are selling for, right? Which is what your MLS can offer you. And they also want help to determine how much home buyers can afford, which is traditionally when that working with the lender hand in hand can help you with helping that buyer understand exactly what they can actually afford. In fact, in my consultation, one of my questions is finding out what my client's preferred monthly payment is. I actually worded what's the most you're looking to pay, because obviously I know that everyone's preference in paying mortgages nowadays is $100. So I'll just say the max so they can be realistic with their marketplace about what exactly is what's the most that they're looking to pay. So then that way, one, when I'm talking to the lender, then the lender obviously in return will tell me, hey, Martha, then that means that the sales price should not exceed X. And then that way, when they are set up in the system and or when I'm emailing them properties and or when they're doing their own research, right? And they're sending me that $800,000 property when I know that the lender said that they can't go higher than $500,000. And that, as you can imagine, can save a lot of time and gasoline, if you know what I mean. So I definitely like to ask that question up front, and I would encourage you to do so as well on your end. So then that way it's just getting, it's like coming in from a large pool of possibilities to sort of filtering it out, right? With asking the right questions. If you're looking for some questions of what you can possibly ask here on the screen, you'll see some. So the first step in stellar buyer service is being aware of their needs, right? Sometimes they really don't know what their needs are, and that's why they need you as a professional to uncover them. So you should just have conducted a thorough needs analysis with your buyer. And traditionally, honestly, when I have a buyer consultation, I say I need all decision makers to be present, right? How many do we know that they may be buying it themselves, but yet they want their Uncle Pete who bought real estate 20 years ago to come along, and or they have their sister or their brother or their dad that's going to be coming in to help them pick the right house. I want all those individuals to come to me the day that we meet to do the consultation, because if I don't get them in front of me, I can have the best consultation I can with that person, with that buyer, but yet she's going to be influenced, or I'd say she, he, whatever, right? Are going to be influenced with whoever else they have in their personal circle. So I'd rather just get their own personal circle right in front of me, and we can go ahead and go over any questions, any concerns, any beliefs that they believe about what's happening in the market, and we can address it right then and there. And traditionally, I've had a lot of value with that. So then that way we can see eye to eye with each other. We can discover exactly what's important to the buyer itself. And then again, as realtors, it helps us go from this large scale of properties that are available to more so narrowing it down closer to the person's necessity and what they have expressed to you that they're looking for. So I hope that some of the questions that's on the screen here will help you guys with understanding what type of questions you want to ask, right? Or finding out how they're perhaps what their family or whoever's going to occupy the property consists of, right? Are they, sometimes the more questions that you ask and or the way that you ask it will actually open that person up for them to actually give you their whole position and why they're doing it, and what they need. So sometimes you'll find yourself that the more authentic you are, the more caring and empathetic you can be, the more that person on the other side will be willing to will be willing to actually open up to you and express to you their situation. So sometimes if that person doesn't, then that's when you can go into such questions to help you underline exactly what it is that they're trying to get, their motivation, why they're trying to get it, right? Most importantly, their time frame about when they need it. So then that way it just helps you filter out from everything that's going on. And when you're talking to these listing agents before you show it to them, and yet you know that your buyer situation is that they need to move by March, but yet the listing agent just told you that this seller can't move out until April, then right there, you're already understanding that, you know what, then, hey, buyer, I won't show you this property because that seller actually needs to stay in the property until April, whereas you need to move in March. So the more that you're able to uncover these needs as well as ask the right questions to the listing agents, the more of an expert you will look in your buyer's eyes. And then obviously the more of that, the more referrals and longevity of a relationship you will have with that client of yours. So I'm just big on asking the right questions, even bigger on being authentic and being empathetic to other people's situation, because with that, that's when people are normally naturally inclined to opening up to you to let them know exactly what their motivation is and everything else that you need to know to help them solidify the right property for them. All right, so the answer that we brainstormed fall into two basic categories, right? Buyers' lives change and the world around buyers change. So either case, a buyer's needs can change, whether a change in their lives or the world around them. You may need to revisit the needs analysis during the transaction though, right? So revisiting the needs analysis can also help you find out why homes that should be perfect for your buyer are not inspiring offers. Believe it or not, sometimes what we think we desire is not what we actually need. Right? If you're showing them all the historic houses you thought would have them thrilled, it's time to find out why, right? So it's also common for buyers to get frustrated in a tight market and start looking outside of the criteria. Maybe you have empty nesters looking to downsize and suddenly start looking closer to their current square footage. So if so, it's time to find out why. Are they utilizing their earlier numbers too small or too large, or are they just getting frustrated at not finding what they need, right? So this is where uncovering the right needs, uncovering the maximum that they're looking to pay, uncovering also the furthest out that they're looking to drive or be in will help out, right? Because sometimes everyone wants this zone, but yet if by chance in that zone, nothing's available within their maximum price range as well as their time frame, then by you knowing that they're willing to go further out, then hopefully in the outskirts of that particular zone, you should be able to match them with a property that offers them more of what they desire and what they prefer to stay in. All right. Sometimes we got to also have tough conversations. Oftentimes say that us realtors are not only realtors, we can be consultants, we can be therapists, mediators, all of the above. Therapists, a thorough and frequently revisited and revised needs analysis is your greatest resource in having tough conversations with clients, right? So that's why asking all the right questions, taking proper notes. So then that way, when clients start getting frustrated and you can whip out that original, motivation list and or questions that they answered for you to remind them that, look, you guys have been wanting this, but we've been drifting away from that, right? And or reminding them, sometimes everyone needs to be reminded sometimes of their motivation as to why they got started, right? Maybe they are the first person in their family to ever buy real estate and how it's always been a dream of theirs, but yet because it's not working out as quickly as you expected it to, is not to say that you should quit. It's just that we need to be more strategic on where it is that we're going to be moving forward the moment that you find that property that you want to move forward with it, right? So don't be afraid to have these tough questions, because sometimes tough questions as needed to help them realize that when they find that property, it's no more time to negotiate. If you really want it, you're going to have to follow what it is that the market is saying. So these are the type of conversations you're going to find yourself sometimes being in, especially as we approach the spring market, right? So what are some other conversations that you feel that you need to have with clients along the way? Anyone want to take a stab at it?
I would say probably one could be if this is going to be a long living property for them, or if it's just a quick live property and quickly turn it into a rental property.
I love that. Yeah, seeing them look at the future and how that could potentially be a passive income type of property as opposed to permanent. Great idea. Yeah. So show homes based on the needs assessments, right? So now that we've talked about how we can use the needs analysis to help our clients stay on track and discuss some conversations we need to have with them, let's talk specifically about showing homes. So showing homes is a process like everything else. First, you need to find the home that fits your client's need analysis. You'll find it normally on the MLS. You will also need to make sure that your buyer is set up to use the KW app and show them how to search for a home and follow the buying process with your client, with your guides. In choosing the homes, you will show clients based on their needs analysis and expectation setting, right? So whether it's the time frame, the fact that they need closing help, whatever it is, right? As well as what the lender said that they can close on. These are all reminders of what to keep in mind for when it comes down to you, finding the property, but also potentially putting in an offer. So as we mentioned, in an extreme seller's market, you should not show homes at the top of your client's price point. What that means is that if a person is approved for $300,000 in a seller's market, then it would be recommended for you to be keeping the numbers at least $285,000. So again, if they've been approved for $300,000 and you are in a very hot marketplace, then the most you should be looking for is at $285,000. And that's only in the event that your client may have to add an escalation clause on there, or maybe have to overbid to beat the other offers. Because obviously, if you can imagine, if you make $300,000 the peak, then your client won't really have much negotiation power if in fact they do have to raise the bar a bit to outcast all the other buyers. So that's normally one of the tricks that's recommended when you're in a seller's market, about determining and telling your clients why we're going to kind of focus on the 285 as opposed to focusing only on the 300. Now, if you're realizing that in your marketplace, houses are lasting longer on the market, there's not multiple bidding wars and stuff like that, then yes, they've been approved for 300, then I normally would say 305, right? Because as we know, sometimes a lender can say that they've been approved for $300,000, but maybe the next property's taxes was not as high as what the lender has calculated. So that may give your client a little more wiggle room to go up to 305, for example. Or maybe he was also calculating an HOA or things of that nature. So the less taxes, the less fees associated with the subject property, including condo fees, HOA fees, all that type of thing, stuff can actually possibly increase your client's buying power. All right, so show only the best properties for your buyer, right? Ones that you have thoroughly screened in advance and meet their criteria. Have the MLS printouts with the pricing information and key details about each property, things like the bedroom sizes, number of bedrooms, age of property, etc. If that stuff is important to your client. Mark properties on a map and answer location questions. Be knowledgeable about the property and neighborhoods. Include recent comparable sales so you can answer pricing questions. Again, because this is a national course, in other words, we have realtors out here from other areas, you may want to be mindful of what appraisals time frame, or what it is that appraisals look at, what their time frame is. Here in the DC, Maryland area, traditionally appraisals look up in the past 6 months to determine the value of a property. So that's, I would say that for those of you that have mentioned that you're in the state of Maryland, to consider making sure that when you're presenting your clients with the comparables, and you may want to look at in the past 6 months. I'm actually even noticing some of my colleagues are actually not looking in the past 6 months. They're actually looking in the past 3 months, only because so much has happened in our marketplace in the past 6 months that the closer you are to today's date, or the date that you're pulling the comps, the more realistic the pricing trend should show and reflect, which is what you want to portray to your client. So once you discuss the 1 to 6 that you see in front of you, ask the other ideas to help you preview homes to make sure that your buyer is not only seeing the best homes for them, but also can actually see the right homes that's matching more to their necessity. All right, so showing homes means agent interaction. Okay, so once you are ready to show homes to buyers, always read the listing agent remarks and be sure you are scheduling according to the listing agent's instructions. Calling the listing agents to schedule an appointment when the instructions clearly say they would like you to use a scheduling service would not endear you to them. Trying to schedule for tomorrow when the instructions say the first showing isn't until 2 days from now, it doesn't mean you can't contact the agent to ask questions not answered. Just be sure to read the listing remarks before you actually call them. Okay, so how you make that contact matters for how they will see you throughout the transaction, and that is very true. But yes, some realtors are reasonable. I like to believe that I'm one of them. So even if I can see that you're sort of brand new, I'm going to try to share with you information once again, because the way I look at it is that it's you and our job potentially, right? You and the other agent's job to try to find that happy medium to get our clients to the finish line. So if I hear that, you're clearly fairly new in the industry, then I'll try to share with you, hey, yeah, what kind of loan does your buyer have, right? If your buyer has an FHA and VA type of loan, because that is in essence, I would say the strictest of the three, right? The three being conventional, FHA and VA, there's certain things that the property itself needs to have in order for a lender to give you financing for the subject property. So that's why I was suggesting to you guys that when you're calling the listing agents before showing the property, then you should ask that if in fact your client is an FHA buyer or a VA. I'm talking about they're so strict down to the point where if it's a house that has a stairwell and it has a staircase of over 3 steps, then they need to have a handrail. Windows need to be opening. Sometimes, depending on the jurisdiction that you're in, each room needs to have a smoke detector. If the house itself has a wood burning fireplace and or a gas stove or a gas HVAC system, a hot water tank, then the carbon monoxide detector needs to be installed. So it's these type of things. And then the other one is like when you're coming out of a basement or the ground level one, traditionally towards the back of the house, and there's normally a drainage in the back of the house, that needs to be free and clear of any leaves and debris. So it's those small things that an appraiser will actually go out to the property and see that can deter and or cause possible delays on that sales transaction until such items are repaired. So those are the type of things that you want to look out for. So say, for example, another common thing is that if you know that your buyer is really tight on funds, and then when you call the listing agent and you're, hey, what is the seller looking for? And that listing agent says, my seller's not going to do anything for the property. They're selling it as is, but yet you discover that there's a lot of things that need to be done at the property, then that might be a red flag of a property that you may not want to show your client. And or if you choose, if you believe that that's not a property that your client should consider, then of course convey that to your buyer as to why the red flags that you're catching on, because it's better for you to disclose it as opposed to you making it seem as though they cannot see it, because sometimes you'll call somebody else to show that property. And in the end, you're really doing it to look out for their interest. But if you discover such information, then it's your job to disclose that to your client. Remember, we talked about communication earlier. Obviously, if they really want house A, but yeah, you're like, hey, no, I actually found out that the seller's not going to do any repairs to it, and the type of loan that you have with your lender requires that the house needs to have this, then are you going to be the one that's going to put it up? Because traditionally, in order for you to even close on this house, such items need to be done. But those are the type of things that as a good proactive agent as you are, then you'll be able to identify the red flag early on, try to see how it can be resolved if and when it happens. And that way, when it happens, there's no one that's caught by the deer light, right, by the headlights, and no, I didn't know, you didn't tell me. These are the type of things that, again, the more transaction that you're closing on, you'll be able to quickly identify them in future runs. So let me know if you guys have any questions with everything I just shared. Here's pretty much an outline of what's suggested as a real estate agent that you should carry with you. Considering that we're coming out of COVID, Some sellers I noticed are starting to still say, put on your shoe covers, right? Sometimes they even say, put on a mask. But just, it wouldn't be a bad idea for this to be a toolkit in your trunk that you can carry with you. That way, if you're ever showing a property that you realize that the seller instructions or showing instructions says exactly that you don't feel like you have to, that you're not prepared, you can just whip it out and have a successful showing. Safety first when showing houses, right? So don't forget about safety. Remember that the tips from open houses: always beware of your surroundings and only meet clients that you have already vetted. Do not go to a vacant house with an unknown buyer alone. Follow your instincts. If at any point you do not feel safe for any reason in the showing, always announce yourself. Even if you've been told a listing is empty or the owners will be gone, knock before opening the door and announce yourself loudly and repeatedly until upon entering. Warn clients that many homes have cameras and even audio recordings equipment. Keep comments on the home out of range of the home itself. The driveway is not good enough either, right? Either cross the street and talk to them or at another location. So just make sure that you are warning your clients about that. I know here in the state of Maryland, there's actually one of the clauses that's actually included in the contract that you sign says that the seller is to disclose if they're going to be recording anyone, because you cannot, as you know, cannot audio record anyone without their permission. So, you know, if your state is like mine, just make sure that you're aware of the law and that if in fact you are the buyer agent, that you are warning them about this. So then that way they know, let's not talk on site, let's talk outside, across the street, stuff like that. All right, so remember your goal is to sell a home, not show homes. Pay attention to your buyer's body language and cues to avoid continuing to show them homes that they don't like, even if they are the best ones from your search. If you show the buyer the first 2 homes on your list, they hate them, and you know that they will hate the third, cancel your last showing. Use that time to dig deeper into their preferences and needs because you've missed something. With each showing, you should be getting closer to putting in an offer. Consider this property elimination question. If you had to choose a property house to purchase right now, which one would you have selected, the first one or the second one? Those are the type of things that you can ask. Sometimes when leaving each property, I personally always say, is there anything about this house that you have a question on or that stands out to you? And then that way I'm taking my own personal notes. And the reason why I found that to be great, because sometimes if you don't ask them such questions after leaving every single property, then sometimes if you save it to the end, they're gonna say, dang, what was that? What was it about that house again? Like that type of stuff. And then sometimes if they don't remember, you're gonna have to drag them back to the house. So that's why I'm just personally recommending to you get comfortable and used to it. Every single time that you're wrapping up on the house, you say, what do you think about this house? What stood out to you about it? Stuff like that. And there's normally feedback is, oh, it was too small, or I didn't like the bedroom sizes, or I didn't like the curvature of the whatever it is. They're simply letting you know, and you need to be taking notes as your realtor to let them know that, hey, if this style of house, if they didn't like the bedroom sizes in this style of house, then you know next time you shouldn't show them the same similar type of house, because that house will more than likely have the same type of bedroom sizes. So that's why asking the right questions, whatever questions you decide you're going to ask. But the point is, it's an open-ended question, not did you like it? No, no short-ended question, because the point is that that's what it helps you start filtering out what is important to them and what isn't. Again, remember, they don't do this for a living, but we do. So the more questions that you ask, the more you're able to get down closer to the subject property that is going to work for them. I saw that one of you guys asked me a question. What if you as an agent are not aware of recording audio devices? Well, again, thank you for asking. You should know if your state is or is not. And if you don't know, then ask your broker. In other words, ask your broker, is your state one that is illegal for a recording audio device? If they say, no, it's not illegal, then it's not illegal for someone to record you or not. Here in Maryland, it is illegal for someone to record you verbally without your consent. So in places like they can't use that. Even if they wanted to do it, they're not supposed to. They're not supposed to, and they're the ones that can get in trouble, not you. What's your question then? What if you as an agent are not aware of recording audio devices? What if, meaning like, what if you're not aware, what if it's there, but you're not aware of it? There's cameras everywhere now. I mean, you're there to show the property. So in essence, just make sure that you're showing the property and that you're not discussing anything pertaining to anything that can be against your client if in fact your client decides to move forward with it. So what if it's there and you don't know of it? You're not doing anything that you're not supposed to do other than just showing the property and get out, if that makes sense, right? I see what you mean about the convo. Yeah, just don't have a conversation in the house, even if it's your client that I love this house, I want to move forward with it. Don't have that type of conversation. Even if I don't like the house, it's okay. This house is not for you, no problem. Next, let's go on to the next property. But if I were you, if your client says, I don't like this property, when I get outside, I'm going to say, well, what is it about this house that you did not like? Because again, it just helps you filter out as opposed to the mass that you started with. It starts filtering out what exactly they're actually looking for. Okay, so your job is to help your buyer make, you're welcome. Your job is to make the best decision for them. Buying a home is a big deal and buyers can experience hesitation and reluctance. So they are afraid to commit. They don't like some small minor details of the home. They feel they haven't seen enough homes. They need to sleep on it and get the opinion of a trusted advisor. This is where I was mentioning to you as to why I normally like to share with them the comparables for that reason, because if the comparables are showing that days on market, houses aren't lasting too long, then that right there should hopefully solve their desire of wanting to sleep on it. Like sometimes you can, I'm not telling you what to say, but sometimes, you know, how would you feel if tomorrow I'll tell you that this house is no longer available? And if they're like, oh, it wouldn't matter, it's okay, I'll keep moving, then that right there shows you that they really possibly didn't want it, right? Because when a person really wants it, they're like, oh my gosh, I would die if this house is not available tomorrow. I really want it. Then unfortunately, you're going to have to possibly make a decision tonight as opposed to waiting for tomorrow, even though, well, let me know whatever else I can provide you with to help you reach that decision. If there's anything you want me to provide to you, the comparables, run it by the lender, right? Now that you possibly are interested in this property, allow the lender to now talk to them about what their monthly payment will be, the total money that they're going to need out of pocket. These are all things that you can do when you're introducing yourself to the lender to let them know that, hey, when our client says that they're considering a property and or they're indecisive between two properties, I'm going to call you and I'm going to tell you the two addresses in hopes that lender, you can actually reach out to the buyer and discuss with them the monthly payment as well as their overall closing help. I emphasize on overall closing help because that means that down payment and closing help, as if the seller did not help them with anything. I normally like for them to see the big number in order for them in return to tell you, the realtor, to say, you know what, out of that big number, I can only do this. And traditionally, whatever it is that they can do will go towards the down payment, and hopefully the remaining of closing costs, if any, then that's when you know what you need to negotiate with the seller. So by you knowing these type of things up front and you doing these type of activities, it can help you draft up the right offer that will benefit your client, right? So just help your buyer make decisions with the following, right? Always go back to their motivation, go back to their needs and wants, advise them as a consultant and fiduciary, allay their fears, solve their challenges, and calculate the cost of waiting, right? If they go back to renting, how much is that really benefiting them and their loved ones in the near future? Any ahas that anyone has had so far? We talked about buyers. We're about to start going into the sellers, but does anyone want to share any ahas or anything that stood out to them?
Yes, I guess just making sure that you do all the activities needed to be, just to make sure that you're on point each step of the way. Like you said, if you have a buyer who's on the fence about two properties and you say, hey, you know, you call the lender and say, hey, my buyer, she likes these two. I want you to sit down and talk to her about, you know, what those costs are going to look like, you know, what that mortgage payment look like, or the you know, all the things that you have to bring to closing, you know. So just, I guess, really just the things that they need to do, or that you need to do along the way to make sure that you're in sync with everything.
Amen. Well said, Wilbert. Thank you for sharing that. Any other ahas or any other questions or anything that stood out to you guys wanted me to go back and rephrase a bit? All right. So now we're going to be talking about sellers. And let's jump right into what it is that sellers want most from their agents, right? 21% of them want help with pricing their home competitively, right? While 20% want help with the seller market to market the property to potential buyers. 16% of them want help with the sale of the home within a specific time frame. 16% want seller find ways to fix up home to sell it quicker. The 27% that you see there is what 12% of them actually want you to help them find a buyer for their home. 6% of them want you to help them with negotiating and dealing with buyers, and 5% of them want help with the paperwork, inspections, etc. So that is according to what the NAR was able to pull from the sellers back in 2021. By the way, every single year, feel free to look up this chart that NAR tends to provide to us. It's helpful to help you identify in the upcoming year what it is that the recent buyers and or sellers are actually looking for, in hopes that by you seeing that, then you can actually start, using that as marketing to your potential clients as to why it is that they should work with you and choose you, because you are in essence providing to them what it seems the masses are expecting from their realtor. All right, so we start in the same place with sellers that we do with buyers, right? So their needs analysis. For sellers, we need to know their price, their time frame, conveying it to them. So these are the three major factors that you need to know about your seller, right? So just as with buyers, when things aren't going as you think they should, you need to revisit and perhaps even revise their needs analysis. Just as with buyers, either the seller's life can change or the world around the seller can change. So for example, the seller could lose their job, so carrying the mortgage on the house becomes difficult or impossible, thus changing their time frame. Perhaps the seller finds their dream home, puts in an offer, and needs to move ASAP, right? Which changes the time frame. Or perhaps the local economy shifts, putting fewer buyers in that price range on the market, and or flooding inventory as people sell to move away, which could shift their price. So these are the type of reasons as to why it's important for us to always remain in touch with them, sometimes over communicate and allow them to know what their game plan is to help them get out of the whatever situation they may find themselves in. Okay, so there are just two things a seller can control: price and condition, right? So your job is to know the market and advise them on how to get the best price with the least amount of work in the quickest time frame. Therefore, you need to know your market. So if ever you're, sort of having that listing presentation with that seller, then I hope and trust that you should have done your research. Research meaning that you should know all the things that are active, all the things that are about to come on the market, all the things that are under contract, all the things that have sold in the past 6 months. So then that way you can sort of work backwards. I am one, everyone works differently, but I am one that I have to see the subject property, because the condition of it helps me understand what price range to the seller can possibly sell it at. Right. So obviously, if you go to the house and you realize that the kitchen is original, the bathroom is original, what have you, then you need to compare it to those houses that are in the same condition, as opposed to if the house needs work, you should not be comparing it to a renovated property. Not unless perhaps your buyer or is looking for such a property that they're trying to understand, if I fix this up, how much can I sell it for, right? Also known as the ARV, after repair value. Here in the state of Maryland and DC, we have a third-party company known as Max Sold Price, that if you're ever working with a property owner who the house needs work, but they just don't have the finances to do the work, then third parties like Max Sold Price, it's also Encore, where when a seller has enough equity in their house, then they can actually come in and do the renovations to the house. So then that way the seller can actually sell it for its max. So, you as a real estate professional in your marketplace should be aware of such entities, if any. So then that way, when you're in front of a seller and you realize that the time frame for them, it's not about time frame. Maybe for them, it's I want to sell it for the most I can, but yet they're flexible on time frames. And such entities like that one wouldn't be a bad idea, because you're doing your part. You're doing your part of actually sharing with that seller all their true options of what they can do to possibly sell their house at max, as opposed to sometimes you'll come across sellers that, for whatever reason, they need to hurry up and move. So for them, time frame is more important. And so with that, then that's why it's wise for you to know the true condition of the property. So then that way, when you're comparing it to the property surrounding it, then you're using the right comparables to help them understand exactly what's a decent price range that they can enter the market on. Okay. Sensitive seller conversations. Getting a home ready to sell for the highest price with the least work in the best time frame can involve some sensitive conversations. Hardly anyone keeps their house show ready all the time, and it's more of a challenge for some sellers than others. What are some issues that come up with sellers and the condition of their home that you have to deal with delicately? Can anyone share an answer?
Clutter.
Animals,
Clutter. I heard clutter. And what was the other one?
animals,
Animals. Yep. Anyone else want to throw some ideas, some out?
Maybe if you have small children there, or
Meaning toys and that stuff like that is everywhere.
yes,
Yep. Smoking is another one. Deferred maintenance, personalized decor that maybe they wanted to use that burnt orange type scene, right? Illegal activities, guns in the houses, just expensive items everywhere, stuff like that, to each his own. But the point is that sometimes when it happens that way, you have to prepare yourself on how to handle that conversation. So with that, what are some issues that come up around pricing? Does anyone want to throw that one out?
yes. So I guess I would say maybe like if they have their mind dead set on a particular price, they want to sell it for this amount to get a certain amount or walk away with a certain amount, and maybe the market is not saying that it's going to sell for this amount. Because for myself personally, I had an example like that last year where the lady, she wanted to pay, or she wanted to sell her property for what she got it for 10 years earlier. And I had to tell her, like, man, that's based on the market, it's not going to sell at that particular amount. And so that might be a big challenge.
You were absolutely head on. That's exactly true. Sometimes, and it's also broken. I've been in that situation where it's broke my heart, where folks are like, I put in top of the line material. I extended my deck. I did this, I did that. And it's like, well, sometimes the things that people choose to renovate or put money towards is not necessarily going to increase the value of your house. Of course, a deck will, but extending it sometimes will or may not. But it breaks my heart sometimes when people are watching, HD TV and they feel like they can do works their own selves, and they don't understand that workmanship also plays a major factor on the true condition of a house. So it's a tough situation for us realtors in those cases when people divulge to us that they spent $30,000 on something that they renovated, but yet the things that they chose to renovate are in essence didn't provide more value to their house. And as you very well said, Wilbert, sometimes also, but when you did it, maybe can be outdated. Like I had to meet a seller yesterday and her mind said, like, Martha, I've invested so much over the years. And I had to express to her, like, you actually, with all due respect, you did these repairs back in the 90s. The repairs and upgrades that you did in the 90s are, it is not the latest, the modern. So, it's tough conversations that we have to be in. But remember, just like any other human sake, it's not what you say, it's about how you say it. So just keep that in mind. So we must apply the communication standards we discussed at the beginning of the session, right? Keeping these things in front of you as we look at a conversation template. Make sure that you guys are viewing it in your participant guide about things of what you can say and do to not only provide a strong foundation for a sustainable relationship, but even more to set and manage expectations in the long run for you and your client. So just make sure that you review that in your participation guide about ways of how you can handle tough conversations. And also, if you ever find yourself in that situation, don't be shy to call your broker. Like that is exactly what your broker is there for, is to help you understand how to maneuver certain situations that may not be too common. Because there sometimes, even if a person is a hoarder, for example, there's certain, you cannot say certain things to that person because that is psychologically some things that come about it. So if you ever find yourself in such situations, please rely on your broker or your team leader for further guidance. You know, if you ever go to a listing appointment and you know that it's a person that is a hoarder, for example, it wouldn't be a bad idea for you to possibly talk to someone like an organizer, right? It's just like stagers. There's a lot of organizers out here. Sometimes those professionals like that have knowledge on how to work and sort of come in, if you will, on how to handle such sensitive conversations. So things like that is what you as a real estate agent should be mindful of. So when you meet at the property, then hopefully you can come in with the right person that can help you sort of communicate more effectively with such situations like that. Okay, so just make sure that you provide the 4 calibers that's mentioned on here on screen, right? Providing the strong foundation, the setting and manage expectations proactively throughout the transaction to create the peace of mind for your client, in which in the end, it does enhance your credibility. Another thing is if your client, unfortunately, there are another uncomfortable conversation that you may be forced to have with the seller. You may have to inform your client that they are violating the Fair Housing Act if they refuse to stop their course of action. You will have to withdraw their listing and cancel the listing agreement if by chance your clients do any of the 5 things that you see in front of you, right? So remind your client of their obligations under the Fair Housing Act, right? They cannot discriminate based off a person's sex orientation, race, marital status, etc., familial status. They cannot discriminate against that. And if by chance, when you're getting to know that potential seller and you pick up on those type of things, then that is either when you can either pursue with trying to correct them and let them know that that is against fair housing, and or that is when you're going to say, hey, this just won't work for me. I'm sorry, I'm not your realtor. And sometimes it's not only about them trying to hire you, but it's sometimes about you trying to hire, you giving them the opportunity to be your client. Know that you can fire people as well. And this is actually one of the reasons that if the client can understand that, this is when you put it on the market, it's opened up to all kinds of individuals, then you might have to make that bold decision at that point if you do want to continue moving forward with that being your client. All right, so no commission is worth your reputation. There is absolutely no commission that is worth your integrity, your reputation. Remember what Keller Williams stands for, which is what the W, right? Does anyone want to read this out loud? No problem, I'll read. Win-win or no deal. Integrity, do the right thing. Customers always come first. Commitment in all things. Communication, seek first to understand. Creativity, ideas before results. Teamwork, together, everyone achieves more, and that includes that co-op agent. Trust starts with honesty, equity, opportunities for all. Success results through people. We discussed the value of including a statement of your commitment to your upholding fair housing laws in your listing agreements. Eventually doing so will allow you to avoid these type of issues. So if they come up, you should report the conversation to your broker immediately and discontinue representation. This will not only protect you legally, but it will also help you to prevent discrimination. Treat people how you want to be treated is the motto to live on. So far, we have discussed on our relationship and communication with the seller. We also covered seller needs and saw that sellers are looking for an agent to market their home. Let's talk just a little more about how you're going to market the listing and your brand. So highly productive listing agents market both their brand and the listings at the same time. The marketing opportunity provided by listings is why they are one of the 3 pillars of a successful real estate agent's business. Leads, listings, and leverage. When you focus on your listings, buyers will come. We've already talked a lot about how you can do this on our sessions and on lead generation, particularly open houses. Open houses should be one part of your marketing plan as they are highly leveraged. So in the MREA has a 14-step marketing plan for listings. Okay, so make sure that you go over the 14-step marketing plan in the participant guide. Does anyone want to read this out loud?
I'll read it.
Thank you, Wilbur.
Let me put this down here really quickly. Okay, the message you put out to attract prospective buyers and sellers is everything. Why would they want to contact you in this market? What would they get out? What would they get if they did? These two questions are at the heart of all effective messaging.
Amen. Thank you, Wilbert. So not only should you be strategic in how you market a home and yourself, much more of which we covered in lead generation and more that you can learn about from Connect live sessions and other Keller Williams training, such as no ceilings, level up your lead generation. You should set your listing up for success by having all necessary documents for your MLS and that you're giving potential buyers and their agents the best view of the house. So one, make sure that you have the right documents for compliance from your region and your market center. This does save you time in answering questions that reflect your professionalism. We will talk about creating a positive relationship with your co-broker in such a moment, but the MLS listing is the first glimpse that they have of you as a listing agent. So be sure that it's a professional one. Also, most MLSs have fines for not uploading the correct compliance documents. By the way, for those of you that's here in the Maryland area, DC, Maryland, Virginia area, I know that the MLS here does not allow you to upload a picture of a house with a sign in front. So if by chance the listing that you are that you're putting on the market, make sure that the picture does not show your actual real estate sign. That's a fine of itself. Make sure that you utilize the right professionals to give great pictures and floor plans. You may even consider staging, real or virtual staging. So remember that you're not just marketing the house. A lower price listing or even a rental is still a representation of your brand. Is it worth it to get professional photos and floor plans when these documents will represent the agent as well? Also, great pictures and other aspects of your listing marketing can be used in future listing packets and marketing. So if by chance you decide to be a neighborhood expert, then such things of community amenities, for example, things of what's happening in the area, you can possibly make a customized marketing packet, if you will, that you can portray to sellers as to your experience with the neighborhood and stuff like that. So that is what also pictures that you can actually upload when you're uploading it to the MLS. That's what that's in reference to. And then last but not least, set the right schedule for your listing. So what is the right schedule for your listing in your market? Do certain areas have broker agent tours on particular days? Are NFL games days? Well, there's no more NFL for the rest of the year. At least for the first half, is your seller able to leave the house more on weekends than weekdays? Does it make more sense to schedule an open house 2 days after listing and hold on showing? So start picking up on the trends of what's happening in your marketplace. I can only speak for my area, so forgive me if I keep referencing it. But here in the DC, Maryland area, it's sort of ideal that you start marketing a property as of Thursday. When you're first putting it on the market. I do love to use the whole coming soon feature, just to it starts helping me see what kind of traffic, because normally, even if it's coming soon, agents can start scheduling it in advance. And that gives me a good inclination if this is going to be a listing that's going to be sold right away, or if it's going to be one that's going to stand on the market for a while. But I love the coming soon feature because it does help me evaluate that. But let's just say sometimes if you don't have the time to do the whole coming soon, then facts do show that if you put a house on the market on a Thursday, then that gives buyers enough time to see it on Thursday and start planning their weekend if they can go see it over the weekend, and or even if you're going to do an open house. So all those factors is what you can determine on how you want to tackle your marketplace with the listing that you have in hand. All right, so remember to import the listing. Always KW provides technology to help you market your listings and your brand in the most effective, efficient, and cost-effective ways. Command includes designs where you can get templated options for door hangers, social media posts, flyers, postcards, more, and or create your own. And once you input your personal business assets, name, picture, logo, team name, these will be saved for you to use over and over. So make sure that you go into Command, and then you would go under Designs, and then under Designs, you would create a design, and then that's when you create the design and then you print it. So click the box, right? And then that's how you'll be able to get from one step to another. You can always type in the property address for your listing, select the listing, and then that way it'll upload all the pictures that you have submitted on the MLS. You could talk through the various sections of coming soon for, like I just mentioned, the for sale, just listed postcards, the listing presentation, being that local expert, neighborhood snaps, for example. These are all the type of things that you can do under Command. So together, these templates give you the right prints and needed to market your listing and your brand. Similar categories exist across the categories of email, social media, as well as video. So make sure that you guys are, diving into Command and seeing how you can utilize it in your business. Would anyone like to read the screen?
I'll read it.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Proper signage. Per NAR, within 1 business day of marketing a property to the public, the listing broker must submit the listing to the MLS for cooperation with other MLS participants. Public marketing includes, but is not limited to, flyers displayed in windows, yard signs, digital marketing on public-facing websites, brokerage website displays, including IDX and VOW, digital communication marketing, email blasts, multi-brokerage listing sharing networks, and applications available to the general public.
Thank you. Thank you. No matter how much technology changes and we use our phones to find everything, including homes, sign calls still occur, and a sign is one of your best marketing tools. Be sure your sign clearly displays how people can contact you. Always get your sign designed and approved by your market center, because the market center traditionally knows what is the rules and regulations within your jurisdiction of what a sign actually needs to have. So please, please, please make sure you do that, because it was something that was changed over here, for example, in Maryland, where the state of Maryland realtors changed something, and a lot of realtors are getting fined. So they made this sort of a mandatory thing that across the board now, if you don't have signs already, make sure that you bring it up to your market center before you say print, right? And you hire that company to print it. So share any information on sign makers and designs that have already been approved, or who in your market center can approve your sign. So make sure you find that out. Sometimes it's not always your broker, it can be your team leader, etc. Be sure you put your sign up as early as you're allowed and in the most advantageous place. Sometimes people even do it. I've seen it where if the property's on a corner, sometimes I've seen it where they'll put signs on both sides, but whatever you see fit, right? You don't always have to do it, but that's kind of an example as to placing it in the most advantageous places. So just explain any additional rules in your area for when and where signs can be put up. So sometimes, for example, signage companies in this area will ask if there's utilities underground, like, sometimes like the sprinkler system, or even invincible dog fences and stuff like that. So traditionally, when you work with a professional signage company, they'll ask you those questions, and those are the type of questions you can ask your seller before you place the order. All right. Any ahas so far that you guys have heard, or you wish to share, or you have any questions on that I've expressed so far? All right.
I have one question, sorry.
No problem.
Yes, I wanted to go back to, you said the MLS was, they gave funds for, it was something.
So in other words, make sure you know your marketplace, because here, for example, in Maryland, DC, Maryland, Virginia area, when you take pictures of your listing, you can't have your sign in it. So your
Right.
real estate signage, it cannot be in the image.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Stephanie, you were going to ask something?
I was going to say that a lot of realtors say they used to put the sign up early to just create interest. But now, once you put the sign up, it has to go into MLS.
What part of town are you in, Stephanie? Because
In
again,
Baltimore.
you're in Baltimore, okay. So you're saying that you cannot have a sign in front of a property if a person cannot find it in the MLS?
Yeah, what I just read said within 1 business day. It has to go in the MLS after the yard sign goes up.
Right. Because back in the, at least I like to say it, back in the day, right? Folks would
Right.
do exactly that. That they'll just simply start preparing the traffic to say, hey, this house is coming on the market. But yet no one would ever be able to find it on the MLS. And so folks started getting very aggravated because they're calling the number. Sometimes the broker didn't even know about the property because agent A is not reporting anything to the broker. So then that's why they put a mandatory sort of regulation on it. So you're absolutely right.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
No, thank you for bringing that up. So we talked a lot today about your relationship with your buyers and sellers. We've even touched on some of the ways your broker and the market center can help you understand your role during the period. So let's end this session by briefly discussing another important relationship. Your co-op agent, that person is going to be working with you to get you to the finish line. At this point in the transaction, you'll likely be communicating with several different agents, either listing agents on properties your buyers are interested in, or buyer agents representing buyers interested in your listing. Though these contacts may be brief, they are still very important. So remember the questions that I recommended to you. Of course, adjust them, whatever it is, but those are the questions that's worked for me in my years. Always remember that you are making the only first impression you're going to get on the agent who may have a great deal to do with your client successfully making a decision. So you can make yourself memorable by being great or terrible, and you will see these people again. You are colleagues now. So be sure to treat everyone with respect and professionalism. Do you need to call another agent at 9 p.m.? Sometimes you do. Most of the time you don't. Consider an email if your issue isn't dire. So just, remember, our clients can sometimes just be a one transaction sometimes, but our co-op agent may be someone that we're going to have to work with frequently. And unfortunately, I see that this happens, unfortunately, sometimes more often than it should. I want to believe that it's not more so because of anyone's choice, but it's more so sometimes we get so into, we got to represent our client, that we forget that, we are to be cooperative with one another and simply, yes, negotiate, but yet find that happy medium, but yet be respectable. So just make sure that, you are doing exactly that, as I'm sure you will, but I'm just kind of, letting you know that this is when it really starts coming down, especially in a multiple bidding situation. People really start getting in their feelings because they feel the pressure from their clients. They understand their client situation. And if they're not the winning bid, then they start really, so just make sure that you're communicating effectively. Remember, not only to your clients, but even more to the co-op agent. And be mindful, you don't have to divulge everything. You're looking out for your client's interest. You don't have to divulge things that's going to hinder your client. Your point is that you can only share whatever you feel is needed to help your client get to a successful contract and even more successful closing. So just remember that part. All right. As the buyer's agent, did you read all the agent instructions before calling for an appointment? Remember, if not, be sure to do so. Never be afraid to ask for questions. Do your due diligence to make sure that the answer isn't already on the MLS. As a listing agent, have you included all the information that both sells the house as well as answers the questions that your colleagues may need you to answer? Are there standard seller disclosures that need to be submitted with an offer? So remember, listing agents, there are certain documents from the listing agreement packet that you have with your seller that some of it is called disclosures. So make sure that you always either upload it or make it easy for those buyer agents to use and find when it comes down to them creating an offer, because sometimes if they haven't seen such disclosures, then that could potentially cause a problem later on. So I always encourage you to make sure that people actually have those disclosures either before they submit an offer, so they can review all that, and then of course then include it with the offer packet itself, which validates that they have seen and read, right, whatever it is that the seller has disclosed about the property. Does your seller require at least 48 hours to respond to all offers? Put it in the agent's remarks. Will the house not be approved for an FHA or VA loan due to the condition? Let your colleagues know this before they waste their time and that of the FHA buyer. So the FHA buyer is a big thing because of the fact that not all properties will be suitable for that type of financing. Another major factor is that condominiums. So even whenever you're working with an FHA type of buyer, you need to find out two things to help you guys. So in other words, whenever you have an FHA buyer, and they're interested in buying a condo, again, a property that is under condo ownership, traditionally what I do is that I ask the listing agent, do you know what the delinquency rate is? What is a delinquency rate? Is of all those property owners in that community, how many of them are late on paying their condo fees? Because if they say that over 16% of them, so that normally the response is a percentage. When you say what is the delinquency rate, then hopefully that number should be no more than 16%. Because in other words, if your buyer is an FHA buyer and the delinquency rate is over 16%, then no lender will provide a financing for that type of loan in that community. And the reason why that is traditionally is because of lenders, they look at it as if that community is struggling. And as you can imagine, you being an investor, a person that's providing financing to people, would you actually put your money in an area that clearly is drowning, if you will, or struggling with the financials? So that's what that divulged. Another thing that is important for FHA is finding out how many owners versus investors are in that community. That's another frequently asked question that normally the lender needs to know to even see if they're going to be able to provide financing in that community. So normally lenders are the ones that ask that question. I've just made it a habit to do it on my end because I feel like one of our jobs as a realtor is to identify red flags early on. So if you can imagine, if you don't find out those two things and you get your client under contract, and the next thing you know, the appraiser goes out and or the lender has started working on that file, traditionally by that point, the buyer has already paid for an inspection and the buyer has already paid for an appraiser, for them to later on find out, oh, the delinquency rate is too high. Oh, there's more investors in this community than owner occupants, so my lender won't be able to give me financing. Can you imagine if you were that buyer, how mad you would be that you just had to spend roughly $1,000 and yet you have to now back out because something that you could have been addressed at the beginning was now 3 weeks later addressed? So that's why I'm sharing with you that tip and strategy in hopes that you find that helpful. And when you work on condos, you'll see how beneficial that is. So just an FYI, those are the type of things that you can look out for when you are working with buyers. All right, so now we are finishing. So we're close to the end. This is when we start closing, and my goal is always to get you out on time. So as we wrap up our learning session, first we talked about the general best practices to serve all your clients during the transaction period, from agreement to offer, including avoiding how to communicate in a way as to reach to make sure that you reach and stay on the 3 levels of service. Then we covered how to best serve your buyers in this period, including how to utilize their needs analysis. Afterwards, we covered how to best serve sellers in getting their homes ready to sell, marketed, as well as meeting their needs and expectations. And so now finally, we touched on starting the relationship with your co-op agent right from the initial contact. Okay, so how's your mindset now? What are your questions or concerns, if any, that you guys may want to discuss now? I always encourage you to ask questions because you never know if maybe someone else is confused the same way and you're helping them by sharing it first.
I had a quick question.
Okay.
Yes, so I wanted to go back to what you talked about as far as the condominiums, because
Yeah.
actually, my older brother has a condominium. And I'm gonna help him sell it later this year. But so just those questions that we have to ask as far as like the delinquency rate, the owners versus investors in that neighborhood, things like that. Are those all in things that we would get from a lender, or are those things that we have to actually?
Community, you would ask that to the community.
So
And since you're representing the seller, I would also recommend that when your brother or you call the association, you ask that question, but you also ask, how much does it cost for the condo resale packet? And how long does it take? So in other words, I like to speak plain English, so forgive me if with my analogies. When a buyer submits an offer on a condominium, after they're under contract, one of the things that that seller has to provide to the buyer is the condo resale packet. And in that packet is where it provides all the rules and regulations of that community. And it's the buyer's job to read it thoroughly to make sure that they're okay with the rules and regulations of that community. And if not, if they're not okay with it, then they have within a certain time period to back out of the contract. In addition to that, in that packet, there's also the financials. The financials is what goes to the lender. And there's where normally it will divulge what it is that the lender is looking for in regards to those two key questions that I just shared with you. There's a couple of other questions that lenders look for, but it's the community that gives you the answers to those questions.
So then in this case, to get those answers, I'll be looking to reach out to like the condominium association maybe. Or...
Exactly.
Okay, got you.
And
Right,
so a
thank
good listing agent, because that's how KWR, that's how we are. When you're the buyer agent and you're calling a listing agent, you are to know that those answers.
Okay, so
Your job as a seller agent is to filter out from all buyers to find that right buyer. So if you're able to obviously find out if, hey, is this community FHA, or if it's not, then you should be focusing only on conventional type of buyers. But now you know why, right? And now you can explain why, because the delinquency is too high, or maybe there's too many investors in it. So those are the type of things. And then also when you're working with buyers, and if whatever price range your buyer is approved for, but yet you know your marketplace and you realize that the only things that's going to be available in this buyer's approved price range are condos, then you're going to ask that lender, what are things that I need to be looking out for? What are, help me understand what it is that I need to find out. What is it that the condo has to have? And he'll help you find out right there. The delinquency rate should not be more than that. The percentage of investors versus owner occupants should not be more than that. He's your partner. He's the one that's going to be able to help you understand from the financial perspective what to look out for.
okay, yeah. So lender will help me understand those financials, and then I would get the statistics from the association.
That is correct.
Gotcha. All right, thank you.
You're very welcome. Anyone else have any other questions? All right. So each day in Ignite, you grow in how you think, feel, act, and implement what you've learned. From learning and ahas, you move towards achievement in your big life. And that's what we're here for, right? To achieve our big goals. So make sure that you guys write in your participant guide about how much you've grown in each of these areas, and just make sure that you continue applying these methods on your daily practice. So then that way it helps you digest things of what you've learned that day, helps you digest keep track of how it is that you're feeling and the actions that you're taking to achieve your goals. So just make sure that you're doing that on a daily basis. These are just simply static reminders about the things that you should consider doing every single day, right? You should consider doing the whole role play with someone. 10 minutes preparing for the list of what the people that you're about to call, right? Taking at least 45 minutes to do an actual real play, right? About what it is that you're going to converse with that potential client. 30 minutes of updating your database with information gathered from those conversations that you've had. Remember, the goal is to have at least 10 conversations with your sphere. Everyone's relying now on social media, but everyone's forgot about how it was that we used to do it back in the day. I remember when I first started, people used to stand outside of businesses, stand outside the metro, stand outside even gasoline stations where they knew that there was going to be a lot of incoming traffic just to get business. So just, I believe that we're in that phase now because of the state of the economy, that we're all having to go back to the basics. So I'm just simply trying to remind you that, hey, before the world of social media, this is how people used to build their business, and don't be shy to go back to it. If you don't have 10 people who you can call, consider doing what I just expressed to you. Identify where it is that tends to have a large pool of people, and go out there and stand with your name tag, hand out your business cards, or hand out perhaps market updates. But do something so you can start a conversation with at least 10 people, get their information, so then that way you can upload those 10 contacts into your database. Start building relationships with them by actually writing at least 10 handwritten notes every single day, and just utilize this 10 5 have one social media engagement, right? So these are the type of things of what you can start building as a habit. So then that way, that habit is what eventually becomes your success track, right? So as you've learned, the first job of a real estate agent is lead generation, because the activity of generating leads is the foundation of your business. In addition, practicing conversations and dialogues will prepare you for success. That is appointments, signed agreements, signed contracts, and sales close. Of course, before we get involved in conversations with our sphere and lead generation, we must always remember to comply with the TCPA and the do not call regulations. So we review this every Ignite session for a reason. So make sure that you guys are following the law. All right. We don't want no one to be in trouble. So just make sure that you guys are going to this. Notice that there's a link at the bottom right here where it gives you more guidance about where you can find it. And just make sure that before you start making calls, especially to random strangers, that you are being mindful of the do not call list. All right. And in closing, right, I engage every conversation in the spirit of contribution, and people are happy to be in relationship with me. All right. So that does it. Does anyone else have any last minute things to say? Anything to share? It is Valentine's Day. Well, I do want to say personally, thank you to Yvonne, Chris, Christopher, even though you have it on here, and Wilbur for allowing me to see your wonderful faces. To everyone else, you missed out on that shout out. I want to see your faces. It's the evening, I get it, but just saying thank you to those that allow me to see your face. But anyway, it's been a joy being on this chat with you guys. I'm always a phone call away if there's ever anything I can help you or support you within your business. And the sky's the limit, guys. All right, take care. Have a wonderful night. God bless. See ya.
Right.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.